Just a few hours ago, the acting president, Chae Sang-mok, appointed two more judges to the Constitutional Court to give them 8 out of a total of 9. The 9 would be a full complement. But this will enable them with reasonable confidence now to go ahead with the trial. And given the charges against President Yoon, they may actually wrap this up fairly quickly, which would restore South Korea to normality. That would trigger fresh elections, we'd have a new president, and on we go.
Now, a court in South Korea has issued an arrest warrant for the country's suspended president. Yoon Suk Yeol was impeached after declaring martial law on December the 3rd, only for the decision to be reversed hours later when MPs forced their way into Parliament to vote it down. Suk Yeol has so far refused to cooperate with an investigation into his martial law order and could now face charges of insurrection, a crime that can carry the death penalty or life imprisonment. It's the latest twist in what has been an extremely eventful, often painful year for South Korea, and I'm now joined by John Everard, former UK ambassador to North Korea, to speak about this. Hi, John.
Hi there.
So let's take a look back at the year, starting with those balloons that hit the country in March.
Well, let's start before then. I mean, the year started really badly with South Korea when North Korea announced that it was going to regard South Korea from January onwards not as a fraternal Korean state, but a separate and hostile state. And the North Koreans then set about blowing up various symbols of unification. This sent shockwaves through South Korea. I mean, the North, it's different, of course it is, but these are fellow Koreans. And to be told that this was now declaring you to be a foreign country was deeply painful. Then, as you say, a row brew up between North and South Korea, which ended up with the North sending balloons full of rubbish, excrement, cigarette butts, all kinds of filth across the South, causing terrible messes in Seoul streets and generally disrupting life. And then, later in the year, we had this terrible constitutional crisis with a president, incredibly, in 2024, in South Korea, of all countries, trying to impose martial law. I mean, it's ending up all right. The constitution worked and the president has been put back in his box. But it has been a really tumultuous year.
And, I mean, how long do you think the political turmoil will last? You've spent, of course, years professionally as the former ambassador, of course, watching these two countries, North Korea and South Korea. Now, of course, we have, as you say, this martial law, massive controversy. How long do you actually see the instability in South Korea lasting for?
I'm not sure. We have a constitutionally strange situation. It's not unstable. I mean, the South Korean government continues to function. We have an acting president who is exercising all presidential powers. How long will this last? It may go on for a few months. The formal trial of President Yoon Suk Yeol has now started, and the Constitution requires the Constitutional Court to rule within 6 months. So that's your end time. It's got to end by late spring, early summer, effectively. But it might well end much sooner than that. Just a few hours ago, the acting president, Chae Sang-mok, appointed two more judges to the Constitutional Court to give them 8 out of a total of 9. The 9 would be a full complement. But this will enable them with reasonable confidence now to go ahead with the trial. And given the charges against President Yoon, they may actually wrap this up fairly quickly, which would restore South Korea to normality. That would trigger fresh elections, we'd have a new president, and on we go.
And of course, the country is reeling from that tragic plane crash. Do we know anything further about what the cause of that will be? It seems like we're not going to know for months, and this will hang over the people of South Korea while they try to work out what happened.
Yes, the results are going to be delayed because it turns out that the flight recorder was damaged in the crash. So the South Korean technicians are saying they can get the data out of it, but it's going to take quite a lot longer than it would have done had it survived the crash intact. A terrible, terrible tragedy, a great mystery. An airline with a perfect safety record, flying a very safe aircraft. Something clearly went horribly wrong. Silver lining, one result of this is that the politicians, eager, sensibly, not to be seen to be bickering amongst themselves while the nation grieves, have started to behave much more sensibly over the last few days. As I say, the acting president has now appointed 2 new justices. The National Assembly has stopped its screaming fit. And the whole tragedy has at least had some calming effect on South Korean politics.
And can I ask you, I've wanted to ask you this question, but we've read quite a lot. This is one of the longer term challenges that South Korea faces about its low birth rate in particular. And I work in Westminster where politicians are kind of constantly talking and are very puzzled about how to boost the birth rate, whether you can in the UK. And South Korea has tried to. But I wonder whether you have any insights on that particular issue and whether or not you feel that anything that the South Korean government has tried to do to boost it has worked.
Well, I think the figures speak for themselves. The South Korean government, successive South Korean governments have wrestled with this, tried all manner of things to try to boost the birth rate, and they've all failed. South Korea still has one of the lowest, if not the lowest, birth rates in the world. When I last looked, it was 0.86 live births per woman, and as you know, the replacement rate is 2.08. The UK, of course, has just published its own birth rate at 1.44, very low, but much higher than South Korea. And interestingly, the reasons that the South Korean birth rate is so low are actually very similar to the reasons why the UK birth rate is so low. Women entering the workforce, not wanting to start families at all, or if they start them, to start late. A drop in the marriage rate in South Korea is very low indeed. South Korean women en masse have said they do not want traditional Korean marriages. And a simple disinterest in having children. South Korea may actually show us what the UK could be like in just a few years' time.
But and nothing that they're doing is working. Have they had any innovative policy solutions that they could do to try to drive that up? Because that birth rate that you mentioned is really perilously low if you consider how much the population is aging by, what the demographic challenges will be, and just how much they will have to spend in the budget in coming years.
Yes, absolutely. The demographers are telling us that if this birth rate continues, then the South Korean population goes down by about one-third
Wow.
over the next few decades. It's a kind of South Korean parlor game. How long is it before we simply run out of Koreans? And it's not a joke. It might actually happen. Innovative solutions. The government has tried to bribe young people to have children, given very generous maternity allowances, good maternity leave, lots of free childcare, child support, lots of money on the table if you decide to start a family in South Korea. It's tried to exhort young people, telling them that children are fun, that you really want children to carry on their family name, and that having children is part of life. They've tried all manner of things. None of them have worked. You can see the birth rate ticking downwards and downwards and downwards over quite a long period, and none of their campaigns have shifted it at all.
It's so fascinating. Well, thank you so much for joining us to talk us through all those many different challenges that South Korea faces in the year ahead. That was John Everard, former UK ambassador to North Korea, speaking to me there.